Preface for the exam, section 4 loops. For these kinds of things, I would just circle any words that you think you might forget as you're going, like for example that you have to use a while loop. It might be helpful to number things. This one is not that complicated, so I'm not going to do any numbering and circling, but that might be a strategy to use if you're trying to keep yourself organized. I'm going to type here. So I'm looking for a number between 50 and 100. That means that I am going to continue looping if the number is either less than 50 or greater than 100. So it's a little bit of the reverse. So I'll comment here that continue looping as long as number is less than 50 or greater than 100. It can't be both less than 50 and greater than 100. It's not mathematically possible. So or is important here. Okay, so I'm probably going to have to prompt the user. I'm going to need a variable to store that. Looks like it's an int, so int user num. And let me set it to something that is out of range to start. So I'll say, well, user num is less than 50, or user num is greater than 100. And I do, again, I have to say user num again here. No shortcuts. And then I will do some printing. Please enter a number between 50 and 100. And then I will use a scanner to read it in. Well, it says declare any necessary variables. It says that all the import statements exist. So of course I've forgotten a place to put my scanner. Scanner in new scanner. And then I will use it here. User num. This has not asked us to do any error checking of the input, so this is all I need to put. If I hadn't left space for my scanner like I just did, then it's fine to put it somewhere else and then just put an arrow in there, in the place where you would declare it. I'm just going to double check this before I tell you it's fine. I've declared the username is equal to 0. It's important that this is a number that starts out of range so that I'll go into my while loop one time at least. And then it's important that I use an or here. Also important that I make sure that usernum gets updated somehow in the while loop so that it will eventually end. So that's part 1. Okay, part 2, write a while loop that calculates the sum of multiples of 4 between 1 and 50. It actually sounds more like a for loop to me, but oh, I'm peeking at number 3 below, and I'm seeing that that's exactly what you have to do for the next one. So, okay, so write a while loop that calculates the sum of multiples of 4 between 1 and 50. 4 plus 8 plus 12, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I need a variable for the sum. It starts at 0, and I need a variable to keep track of where I am, potentially. I think if I'm using a while, int cur_num equals started at 4. And we'll say between 1 and 50. So 50 is not actually a multiple of 4, but let's see. Well, cur_num is less than 50. I will continue to loop. Sum plus equals cur_num, add it in. Update cur_num for the next time through. And that should do the trick. Part 3, write a for loop that calculates the sum of multiples of 4 between 1 and 50. Okay, this is the same. Sum of multiples of 4. Yeah, okay, so same thing I just did, but with a for loop this time. Okay. This is a bit easier, actually. I still need a variable for the sum. I could actually still declare the same variable as I did before, but because I'm using a for loop, usually I use I or some kind of short letter to do that, and I usually declare it inside the for loop, so it's local to the for loop. 4, I less than 50, I plus equals 4, blah, blah. And then this is the same thing as before, sum plus equals I. So it doesn't matter if you call it I. If you wanted to leave it the same as before, I could call it Kernum. Doesn't matter. As long as it's starting at 4, it's going up to 50, but not over 50, and it's going up by 4 each time, and that you're adding that each of those multiples to the sum as you go. Okay, ooh, bunch to go here. Okay, number 4, fill in the following code so that 36 stars are printed in a row. So I now have to figure out how many each of these loops prints. So because I have a nested loop here, it means that however many times I go through this loop, I have to multiply it by the number of times that I go through this loop. So because once I go through this loop the first time, I'm going to go through however many j goes. And then I'm going to go around the big loop and go again all the way, all those times through j. So the number of the first loop times the number of the second loop. So there's multiple answers to this question, but as long as whatever you put here and whatever you put here multiplied together, they become 36, fine, that's all good. So examples might be, you could have 6 and 6 here. You could have, or you could have 9 times 4, etc., 3 times 12, it doesn't matter. Whatever, as long as these two things multiplied together become 36. Now this is, it's easy to just say that because I can see that they're starting at 0 and they're going up to less than the number. So in this case, you can just put in, and they're only printing 1 star per time. This one is a little more complicated because it wants us to print out 6 stars. It's only printing 1 at a time. We're starting at 8 and we're going down by 1 each time. So that means we're at time 8, times 7, times 6, times 5, times 4, and time 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That would print 6 stars. So that means that A has got to be greater than 2. Right? It's like I want to go down to 3, but I don't want to go down to 2. It's got to be greater than 2. All right, moving along to the next one. Write a nested for loop that produces the following output. 5 stars, then 4 stars, then 3 stars, then 2 stars, and the last one is 1 star. Okay. Well, if you had no idea where to start with this, you at least know that we're writing a nested for loop, so one for loop nested inside another one. So let me start with that. Get that structure going for us. I is less than something, I plus plus. Then it will look a little bit more like the one we saw above. J is less than whatever, j plus plus, and then we're going to do something in here. I know it's going to involve printing out. And what can I say here? I'm thinking about print versus print ln and which one I'm going to use, and I can see that I'm going to need one end of line at the end of each one of the big loops, but however many I print using the inner loop on each line, I'm going to probably use a print there. So let me print a single star here, and then I'll print a just empty line here for my big line. So now I'm saying that I is controlling the line printing, and J is controlling the interior, how many of these I'm going to print. Whew, okay, so now I say at time 0 I'm printing 5, at time 1 I'm printing 4, so each one I'm getting less each time as I go up. So, and then my total number of times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is 5 times. So I can, now that I know the logic of my I and J, I can say that my outer loop is responsible for printing the lines, and so that's going to go from 0 to 4, or 5 times total. Now, how do I know how many to print? Well, on time 0 I'm printing 5. On time 1 I'm printing 5 minus 1. On time 2 I'm printing 5 minus 2. So I start to see a pattern here. And sometimes to see this pattern I might write that math out, like on the side or some place where I can just start to see patterns in my eyes. So I might say that this is 5, this is 4, 3, 2, 1, and this is time 0, time 1, time 2, time 3, times 4, something like that. So what I'm seeing in my patterns is that first one is 5 minus 0. The second one is 5 minus 1, gives me that 4. 5 minus 2, etc. And I'm like, oh, look at this. Now I can generalize. I can say j is less than 5 minus I. Is that it for loops? That might have been the hard one. Yep, that's our last one for loops.